Thank you for joining us today. I'm Karin McCarthy, and welcome to the Pivot and Thrive interview series. I'm so excited to be talking with Vermont business owners who are demonstrating creativity, collaboration, and resilience so that we can learn from each other, make connections, and accelerate the pace of small business success in Vermont. We're joined today with Alexsys Thompson. She also goes by Lexi, and I'm so excited to hear about her story and to share it with you. Before we get started, I'll note that we are recording today and that we're connecting together in the time of COVID electronically, but we're recording from Abenaki land. And I want to acknowledge the Abenaki people as the past, present, and future caretakers of this land, and acknowledge the rich cultural history and current culture that they offer to our communities. So thank you for taking that time to acknowledge their culture and history, and we'll get started. Lexi, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really, really looking forward to hearing about your transformation story. You have just come out with this incredible, a best-selling book as it has just launched. So I love to hear from you a little bit about your business as an executive coach, retreat facilitator, and author. And then maybe you can share with us what's inspiring you.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. So I'm a Vermonter. I'll start with that. I grew up in the area and took 24 years in Texas. And then by surprise to even myself, I'm back. So that's a whole nother story. But what I will say is that in the journey of leaving Texas and coming to Vermont, to this beautiful part of Vermont, actually is some of the best part of it all. Hey, Rebecca's here. So in doing that, in Texas, I had a small consulting firm. I closed that down and decided one day, in a lot of the work that I was doing in the tenets of this book, that just because I could have a consulting firm and I was good at having it and all was well, that when I really looked internal to my heart's desire and worked on the alignment piece of who I am with what I do, that wasn't my calling. And there was a lot of ego sorting through that I had to do with that, right? So I ended up putting that down and then actually looking on the West Coast for a little while, thinking I've done the East Coast, I'm going to go to the West Coast. And I couldn't find any land that screamed to me. And that was going to be the requirement, right? It had to really loudly resonate. It was beautiful. I found lots of nice places. But in my 50th year, I came back. I did a couple of retreats. I did a silent retreat at Omega in New York. Then I came to Meta Earth here in Lincoln and did a couple of yoga retreats all in the same month. And then we were at La Rose's survey in Bristol talking about a property in Lincoln. And it just had a little bit more things like hoops to jump through to make it work. And they shared with us the land that we ended up buying near you. And it wasn't even listed at the time. So we were like, well, we'll go look. And it's October. So anytime in October in Vermont, everything looks beautiful. Let's just say that, right? So we drive down up 17 and take a left on Meadowbrook. And we were like, wow, this is pretty magnificent. And we came up to where we are and we turned the car around just because we need to get it ready to leave whenever we leave. And we both looked up at the mountain range that sits in all of our view, right? We literally the same moment gasped for great air. We were like, oh, like that. And we looked at each other and we were like, we found it. We didn't even know how much it was listed for. We didn't know who owned it really. We knew a name. And it was a pretty amazing moment in life. So then we got out of the car and I went down. There's a brook on the property. And quite frankly, I hit my knees in tears. There's just so much here that just called me loudly to this place. And so that was when we knew. We thought at the point still we would just do summers in Vermont and winters in Texas. It's what everybody does, you know. We came back up in 19, did the infrastructure because we had an Airstream at the time, got it all set up. And we were getting ready to leave in October, even after a little snow that year, if you remember. And we were both kind of like, Carrie and I were kind of nitpicking at each other. And we don't typically do that. It's not part of our way of being. And about just as we were coming out of New York, I just started crying and said, I don't want to leave. Turn around, bring me back. I'll stay with my parents. You figure out what you want to do. She's like,
Wow.
oh my God. For me to say stay with my parents was like, I don't even believe it came out of my mouth, because it's not really an option. That was me declaring, hey, leave me here.
This is my home.
So the rest of the 1,900 miles back, we decided to sell all our property in Texas, to come back to Vermont the following summer, May, for my birthday, May 6th, and make a run at this. And Rebecca was actually a key helper in that, the time when she was at the zoning administrator at the office, manager at the office in Starksboro. And then everything, it was why I'm sharing all this, is that this was the beginning of a really big part of my journey in flow. So, I come up to the land, it resonates. Every step thereafter was with ease and grace that I've never experienced in my life. The people, the resources. I remember we were getting the loan from the North Country Federal Credit Union, and because we wanted to bring all of our money local, because when I got here, I realized that Chase Bank doesn't function in Vermont. I'm like, what is that? How can that be? So we had to do that migration. When you move a place, it's your banking, your doctors, it's a lot to lift. And we created a relationship with Bob Morgan over there, who's a friend of my brother's, which is how all this works. And it was just so easy. It was just effortless. And it's been that way pretty much ever since. So those are some of the keys for people when you realize that you're really done the alignment work, to fall into what I call your grace center. And that's the whole backbone for the book. And that's why I share that story with you. It's a quite beautiful story, and there's lots of more little fun things inside of it, but that's the crux of it.
That's fantastic. You talked a little bit about how you had that aha moment. Can you talk about how you've learned to listen to your inner self?
Sure. Yeah. So this is a big one. So I, by nature, have lived the most of my life in my head, right? My intellect has done most of the heavy lifting. I'm known for being kind of smart or academic in nature. And that was kind of a badge of honor for a long time. And then when I started doing the integration work, what I realized is that my head and my body weren't connected. And a big warning sign for that was in 2007, when I had the consulting firm at that point with a business partner, and I came down with my first bout of Bell's palsy. And so that stops you in your track. You just literally have to stop. There's no option there. Once you realize you didn't have a stroke, but now you're dealing with this other thing, and all the ego around having half of your face not be where it used to be, and will it come back, and all those things. And it was in that moment that I started to really understand, as my body was helping show me the way, that there was direct connection between my intellect, my emotional, and my body. So those three parts of my being weren't disassociative from each other. They were intertwined. And it's kind of late in life to get that, quite frankly, but I got it. And I really worked on the embodiment piece. So now when I'm working in my intuition and flow, there's very little head involved. I go back for the logic after I get the data point of this is a go. Then I'll go back and work, re-engineer, and do the due diligence. But if this is a go thing doesn't happen, there's not a need to do the due diligence.
Yeah. I think that I hear how you can tell yourself you're going to do the work, but then the lifting is heavier if your heart's not connected in it. And so that you've found a way to tap in and hear, like have your sonar out for what's going to work for you as a whole being. I think that's a really powerful invitation. And so thank you for that. Can you talk, you mentioned flow, and I'm wondering if you could talk about flow, the concept of flow, how you are finding it in your work?
Sure. Like when you say my work, there's so many things. So I'm trying to discern it in relationship to the book, or in my coaching practice, or in Ubuntu. Help me out a little bit there.
Sure. So you have talked about flow being a critical part, or a part in finding resonance in you and your work. So it could be any of those ways that you're showing up in your career, but when you're channeling your strengths, your talents, your passion, and finding the right balance of challenge and connection
Mm-hmm.
with your skills and your passions.
Mm-hmm.
What does that feel like for you when you are in a state of flow or
Yep.
connecting
Perfect.
in a state of flow? How do you recognize that?
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. So I'll use the book because this is a recent example. So that book was in production for about 2 years before it actually came to life. That book could have been written in 9 to 12 months if I had been, really diligent and followed all the rules, which I don't follow rules very well. And but I didn't. And there was lots of really great reasons. Okay. But one day I was sitting in well, I was actually in the Airstream at the time, which was home and office. It was a lot of things. It was a little bit of a conundrum because you always had to dig out 10 things to get to something. But anyway, so I remember digging through some things, getting ready for a coaching assignment that I had with a client. And there was the manuscript, right, as I'd left it. And I took the manuscript out. So this is going to be a little long, but I'll do my best. So I took the manuscript out of the Airstream with me. I walked over to the brook, which is a sacred space for me. I I've learned how to connect with nature at a very deep level and have communication with certain elements of nature. And I just sat in meditation and contemplation for almost 3 hours with that manuscript, really discerning, was this the work I was here to do? I was kind of bored with it, quite frankly. What did the world need it? Because if the world didn't want it, then I didn't need to waste my time doing it because it wasn't about, I was really clear it's not about me. It just came through me. I was honored enough for it to come through me. And so I remember sitting there with the manuscript. And of course I had a binder clip because it's not bound at this point. And I decided to go review the tenants to see if I even wanted to refine them. And as I opened it up, what came by? The wind. Okay. So the book is 258 pages. I think it was about that at the time. And there goes the book. And interestingly enough, not one page landed in the book, not one. And I would say there's probably 50 or 60 pages that I sat there for a minute and I went, huh, okay. So does that mean, are you asking me, like I remember saying to the earth, like, all right, Gaia, are you asking me how much I want this? Like, do I need to get up and want this? Like this is, and then more pages kept flowing out. And then I was like, okay, so I'm going to get up. I said, so if I'm going to get up and any one of these pages hits that brook, the answer is I'm abandoning this project. And I kept picking them up, and not one was wet from the brook. So that was a moment for me to just sit with, okay, I guess I need to pick this work back up because the world in some one person at least probably will benefit from this work. And that was all that was required. So those types of things for me, nature and my body have become my big compasses. And when I notice my head sorting through something, I know that there's mischief in there for me. Usually it's ego trying to find a way to feel important or be seen or only pick the fun things. But that's one way that I would describe for me how flow is. Now, everybody's going to have to, the cool part is everybody's going to design that for themselves, right? For someone else, they might be deeply embodied their whole life and now need to engage their mind. And so their mind may actually be the thing that they use as their guide.
Thank you. That's an incredible anecdote, story,
Yeah.
and depiction of how you practice alignment of your values, your body, and connecting ideas and behavior. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that.
Yeah.
The power of a graceful leader. Can you talk about how you started on that book, how that idea came to be, and what was your process in bringing it into the world?
So interestingly, it comes back to Vermont, which is something that I realized since the book has been published. This whole project got birthed in Vermont and it finished in Vermont, which is kind of serendipitous and definitely unplanned. So in 2018, I work with a lot of executive females. We were in Texas. Texas is beautiful, but Texas is Texas. I love coming to Vermont in October. I was like, hey, I want to be able to pay for my trip back. I'm going to throw a retreat on. So I can get paid to do the work. Everybody can come have fall foliage, and I'm going to test out these tenants. I'm going to see, and then I'm going to track these people for 12 to 18 months and see if the sustainability, right, and the integration is actually happening, or if my theory is trash and I have to start over. So we all came up to Killington and we rented a huge ski lodge, and there was 12 of us. We had a blast. We did a lot of deep work. We got to know each other at a much more soulful level. We actually had Jillian from Meta Earth come.
Oh, great.
She's become a dear friend. And she did some cooking and really speaking to food and understanding the correlation of all of that. It was a lot of fun. And so we tethered out we worked from 7 in the morning till 9 at night, and we were diving into the tenants. And then we left, and I continued to work with some of them, but not all of them. But I did have a monitoring system in over that next 24 months, actually, ended up being. And every single one of them, without exception, this is a good word, pivoted their life in a way that when they were in that session together, that they resonated so deeply that then when they went back, they were like, I've got to continue doing this, stop doing that, abandon this. Some had career changes, some have had career advancements. Some aren't ill anymore because they got really accountable for their health. I'm one of those people. And so I knew that there was something here inside the tenants that was way bigger and way more tangible than I had previously thought, like this could work. So I tethered it out again in another case study that I was doing with a hospital system. Again, that was working out. I had really good case studies for male and female graceful leaders, because it's more of a energy exchange about feminine and masculine than it is about gender, for sure.
Sure.
And then I was like, okay, I guess now it's time to write the book. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great journey. Yeah.
I have the challenge of being in a sunbeam, which is a gift in January or February.
It is a gift. Send it over. It's not over here.
Pivot.
There you go.
You talked about bringing people together and creating the space for vulnerability and connection. Can you talk about how that supports your work, how that helps people, maybe people you've worked with in that transformation journey?
Yeah. So because of my strengths, I have a lot of influencing and strategic themes. And one of them is called command in the Strengths Finders language. And it was a asset for much of my life, working in a male dominated world, to just be able to force energy and get results. And you read about that in the book. But what ended up happening was I also understood the crippling effect of it. And I understood how I needed to wrap other parts of who I am around it to raise the maturity of it, so that it was being of service rather than hurting others, quite frankly, and myself. And so in that journey, there was a huge pivot for me in that space, because I started operating from heart center, grace center. And that is where everything changed. That's where I started to understand how interconnected I am to all of you, to specifically nature. And through that lens, literally, we could say there was a huge disruption in all of my world, because now nothing looked the same. And that's part of the alignment conversation, because when you see something differently and know better, do better, there's this yearning and calling to straighten your act up. And it doesn't mean you're perfect. I flub up a lot. And I just now know I'm more aware when I do, or I can stop it when I see it happening. And I definitely am committed to always cleaning it up when I mess it up. So that's kind of the core competency of being graceful in your own life. And that's one thing about this book. It was written with the intention that you might be leading people, but whether or not you're leading someone else formally or informally, you are leading yourself. And so the book comes from that place as much as it does from organizational perspective, because I have a knowing from my own experience and from bearing witness of so many other amazing souls, that when we all can just lead ourselves into our divinity, that the world just gets better. Like the world then gets more aligned. And when that's happening, there's opportunities for more love, which is the crux of all of it. And then by default, you're creating safe places for souls to show up. It's just a default position. And I just need to emphasize, it's not perfection, it's participation. None of us, being human, are going to have the experience of perfection, even though we have the illusion of it. And that's the thing. When leaders get into performance and metrics and stuff, we're always seeking 20% more or 2% less in quality issues, and they're seeking they're traveling and trying to capture the unattainable. And I'm not saying you shouldn't search for excellence. That's a noble thing to do. It's just often not graceful to you
Mm.
or others. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you. It sparks for me some ideas about intention and
Mhm.
how operating from a space of intention or starting with intention can support us in having self-awareness and being goal-oriented, but also having an eye to a range of goals, not just that 20%, but did I show up in the way that I want to when
Yeah.
reaching that 20%?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you can talk about your personal practice of
Mhm.
how do you go about connecting with yourself. You talked about being out in nature, but
Mhm.
if you were to set goals, how would you
Yeah.
suggest that others might use intention and
Mhm.
resonance to be a leader in their own life?
So for me, and it's been extremely potent for now over 1,000 people that I've had the opportunity to work with. So it has some legs on this. It's not just the Lexi show. It's a gratitude practice. So and it's when I say practice, I mean it's deep and it's gritty and it's often messy and it's often incongruent until it is, and it's often has lapses inside of it. It's a definite practice and a grinding into until all of a sudden there's flow. Like it's literally grind, 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 like an exercise program. Oh my God, I can't make the hill. I thought I was gonna have a heart attack yesterday. So I can't do it. Then I get to the top and I'm like, I did it. I don't think I'm dying. Oh, here's flow, right? Here's where it becomes easier to do the thing that wasn't easy 2 seconds ago.
Mm.
And so the gratitude practice in my experience is, and what I've witnessed is people are looking for speed, right? Everyone wants a silver bullet. I'm not going to subscribe it as a silver bullet, but I will tell you it's the fastest accelerator I found to knock off the armor that we've created for the illusion to create safety where there's fear for ourselves and get right into your grace center to do the real work. So that's the goal, right? We can all, therapy's not is a good option sometimes, but it often to me felt like it took forever. So I was just trying to, okay, how do I get in there faster to get to work? And that's really, I say, and there's articles I've written about gratitude being the entry point for your graceful leader within you. Point down, hands down. I also do have a meditation practice and a journaling practice outside of my gratitude practice. I've been working the past 6 months or so on and off with Kundalini Yoga, which is proving to offer a lot of access to the vitality of myself, which is kind of the next iteration for me. Um, so that would be the secret bullet if there is one, but you got to do the work.
I think that is so valuable, true, and accessible because
Yeah,
gratitude practice is something that has no cost associated.
no,
Just changing the way that you think has incredible power for how you can show up and behave in the world. So thank you for that invitation.
yeah,
Um, we've been in a pandemic for almost a year.
yeah.
Gratitude practice is a gift and sometimes a challenge. So, how do you,
Mhm.
what challenges are you tackling in I don't know, this space of isolation and showing up um, in your professional self or personal self and dealing with the emotions of being in a pandemic?
So I'm a little bit of an oddball here because I'm a deep introvert by nature. So alone time's lovely.
Okay,
And I used to
you're
have to get on a
thriving.
plane. Yeah, I used to have to get on a plane every month and go places, right? And that isn't happening. So for me, that's a huge awesomeness. And inside of that, where I used to say to clients, we can do most of this virtual, and they'd be like, no, you have to be here, you have to see, touch, and feel you. Now they're actually understanding because we had to figure it out, the openness that that creates. And it's not that in people come time isn't important and valuable, it's just not as needed as we may have thought. That said, I get Zoom fatigue very easy.
Mm.
So, like for example, if I do 6 of these a day, I'm like, if you want to talk to me, you have to use the phone. Or actually, how about tomorrow or next week? So the hardest part for me has been healthy boundaries, um, because I really want this book to find its way in the world. And right now, most of it's through me. I'm looking to change that with some other business platforms and partners. So it's not, don't become a bottleneck to the work. Um, so it's been healthy boundaries for myself, healthy boundaries literally for my community around me. Like healthy boundaries has been a big deal for me this year. And for someone who has the strength that I do, it's typically been easy in the past to be like, no, that's not how it's going to work. But when you work into your graceful leader, right, it's not that black and white anymore. It's, hey, you needed to work that way and I needed to work this way. Is there something in the middle when both people are willing to show up, or when they're not, being able to hold your no is a challenge? Because think a lot of my clients have the issue of, well, I'm home. Everybody knows I'm home, so I should be available any time of the day. And that's not healthy, right? So that's been a really big challenge for COVID, I feel. And mental health, another really deep part of this conversation is that we really need to be talking about mental health at large. And this has put a spotlight on it in a way that has a lot of heaviness to it, and also offers a lot of light because now we're talking about it. Whereas before, specifically if you were suffering from an issue that had to deal with your mental health, there's a lot of shame there. And I think that shroud is being taken away slowly as a result of average Joe who didn't have any mental health capacity issues, we thought, or he thought, or she thought. Now all of a sudden they're dealing and reckoning with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have hopes or visions of what you see post-pandemic life looking like as a professional? You talked about how your past life, BC, before COVID, had you hopping on airplanes. And you talked about wanting to create scalable growth that connects your book with more people to have a greater impact. What does that look like for you and how you envision your work showing up in the world?
Yeah, I'm just experiencing a lot of love right there for that inquiry, because this is a place I'm wrestling with. So I'm going to be vulnerable for here, because I think that's part of the work we do as humans, is that I'm wrestling with ego, right? I let go of energetically, the book is no longer mine, although I'm the steward and the face for it at this point. I have shared with people that have asked this question, that have come in to talk about business structure and partnership around this work, that success for me, and it's not like 10 years down the road, it's 5 or 6 years down the road, is that I'm in the garden here in Ubuntu and people are coming and going however they need to come and go. And they don't even know that I'm there and they don't need me. Like, it's so detached from me that the energy source that is PGL has its own vibration and it's calling in its own sources and it's getting bigger and better. In spite of, largely I'm the catalyst, but not because I can do that part of the work. It's got to bring other energies in to keep lifting it up. I've done my part. And when I say that, there's a little fear, honestly, that creeps in, and I, because someone said, hey, we want to build a whole slew of practitioners that can run PGL in the world. And I'm like, yes, and what about I care about the continuity. I care about the integrity and the alignment, of course, to the people that are coming in to raise that vibration. How are we going to manage that? How much auditing or selection process would we need to have, if any? It's that let go, give it. Yeah, I let go, gave it to the universe, but maybe not on this part. You know what I mean? Like, you can have it over there, but over here, I feel like I need to have a little more control. And really, I just have to keep coming into center and keep going, okay, you really let go of it. Did you really let go of it? Did you really let go of it? And keep saying, practicing yes far more than I do now, and trusting that some things that I don't find desirable are going to happen. That doesn't mean they aren't needed, and staying really detached from that. That's a pretty big vulnerable point for me right now.
That is so relatable, I think, to take something from an idea that, when it's in that idea stage, it's scary even to share it with the world. And then you shared it with the world and you have had great connection and resonance for this idea, and people are excited, they want to jump on, and then to let it go into the world and take wings on its own and support it, let it have life beyond your capacity to care for that idea,
Yeah.
and know that people share your interest and passion.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is a challenge that I don't think you're alone in facing, but
Oh,
I
no.
think the scale at which you're facing, or the pace at which you're facing it right now, because of this incredibly successful launch, I
Yeah.
think probably is raising a lot of the questions
It
that you're
is. And
having
I
right now.
honestly felt like I know this is a book I needed to write. It's not the book I came into the world to write. I'm really clear about that. That's still happening over here in my subconscious and with other input. I really didn't think this book was going to get a lot of attention. And so it got picked up by a couple of big platforms for integration. And so now I'm reckoning with, wow, okay, I guess I need to spend more time here. I can't really abandon it yet and really give it more than I thought it needed. Um, so yeah, we'll see.
Can you talk about the publishing experience? So you
Sure.
wrote the book.
Mhm.
What was your publishing experience? What was the, did you have an agent? How did you work the launch? Because
Yeah.
not everybody has a successful first day or
Yeah.
month. So
Yeah.
what
So
secrets do you have to share?
I'll be happy to share. So I've published a couple of book pieces of work, right? So originally I did the gratitude journals for my practice. That was sourcing, printing, the whole 9 yards, all writing the checks. I have boxes and boxes of them in the lower level of the house for shipping. So that was a heavy lift and a resource nightmare and a shipping guru I became, all those things, right? I said, I'm not doing that again, right? So then I did a small collection called Gratitude 540, where I brought in 30 other authors and we all wrote a gratitude story. And it's out, just to bring energy around that topic. I did all that on the Amazon platform. I did it all by myself, other than some design work. So I marketed it. I got that to bestseller on Amazon. That actually isn't that hard.
Wow.
Just like if you pick, it's hard when you play in the categories you should play in. It's not as hard as if you're a little deviant around where your categories you're going to play in. So there's a science to it. And then this time, because this book, I was traveling, building, doing so many other things. I'm awful at spelling and grammar. It's not my strength. So I knew I needed an editor at least. So a friend of mine who has used this company called Scribe. So Scribe is a company out of Austin, and they work with you. So you develop your outline, you develop your chapters, and then you have a writer that becomes really symbiotic. And Kelsey and I are like this. We're so amazing together. And then they kind of build out some of the meat around it, right? And they check the framework and the tiebacks chapter to chapter. And then you can go into the next program and go into the marketing program. And it's all been a really healthy experience. And I pitched it to a couple of potential publishers. It never got picked up because I didn't keep going, because the first thing everyone said to me is that you can't use that title of the book.
Really?
And when I asked why, I said, they're like, you can't use the word grace in the title of a business book. It's not going to work. That's a church book, not a. And I knew in the deepest part of me that was what business needed, right? Not church, but grace. And they're two very definitive things. Grace can be religious, but it isn't by essence a religious thing. It's a way of being. So when I got those two pieces of feedback about the title, and then they wanted to control the cover, and I was like, I'm out. So that's when I went the Scribe way. So I call Scribe kind of a hybrid, where you have to do the work. You can't just say, go write my book. That would be more like a ghostwriter full on. And then I said, okay, if I'm going to write the book, maybe I should let someone market it for me, because I'm not going to do it. And they're doing a great job. And that's where a lot of this traction has happened, which has been surprising and awesome.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's so, I think, valuable to remember. We talk a lot about being a solopreneur in the Vermont Collaborative Circle and Pivot and Thrive community, where there's this myth that doing it all yourself is the most powerful or valuable way to show up. And really, I think when we step into our strengths and communicate what we do well and align ourselves with those who can support and elevate our work in the ways that we're not perfect or experts, then we can have a bigger impact. When we focus on you are a coach who uses strengths approaches. So when we can step into our ways of knowing and being and show up in ways that connect to our strengths and help to communicate with the world what we're intended to share, with our unique strengths and talents and experience, and then surround ourselves with people who support that, then you'll have, as you have experienced, a much greater impact with the work that you're doing. Because as you've talked about before, there are things that if they don't bring you joy, it's a heavy, heavy lift. And so I think reorienting to align those strengths and to use a service like Scribe to help you get your work out into the world, that's really smart. That's great.
Thanks. And it's, what, it's more fun.
Good.
So when we did the review, because part of the process, just so you know, is that when you get the book ready to go, you have people pre-read your book, right? Because as soon as this is the Amazon thing where I roll my eyes. So you put the book up, but you have to have people not just buying it, but reviewing it for validity and whatever that is. So they have a certain number that you try to reach. I have a very strong network. So I enlisted 96 people and gave them pre-readability of it. And more than half of them read it, wrote amazing reviews, not because they know me, but because they really liked the book, which was way better. And I gave it to some people that scared me to give it to review. I didn't just give it to well, I don't have that many friends because remember, I'm an introvert, but I have that many people I know. But I gave it to over 20 people that I was like, they could totally pork this book. Like they know leadership, they know this field, and they could look at this and go, this is a joke, right? But that's part of being in flow is trusting that the universe is only going to give back what is true. And if the book wasn't supposed to fly on its own, then the book needed to know that early on, So, but I remember because I was waiting for 3 or 4 of them in particular. And I was holding my breath. And when I saw the email come in that their review was there, I was like, it's okay. And this is what I said to myself, it's okay. Whatever it says, it doesn't matter if it's a 1 or a 5, it is okay. And then I would enter into it and it was a 4 or 5 so far. And I was like, yes, but I still know I'm going to get some reviews that aren't going to like the book. That's part of the process. So, yeah.
And to be open to that and to be able to learn through that experience, both as a writer and a coach and a thinker, putting your work out into the world and being open to.
It's so scary.
It is, but it shows that vulnerability is powerful. Yeah.
And this book was hard because in order for me to demonstrate graceful leadership, I actually had to be vulnerable myself. And sometimes I forget what I wrote in the book, which is kind of funny. Because someone said to me the other day, we were on the phone, they're like, there's a part in there where I'm vulnerable about a past debt that I had to clean up. And she says, wow, it took you 15 years, but gosh, you did it. And I remember the shame going, whoop, like,
what did I do?
Oh my God. I was like, how did she know that? Who told her that? Oh, I did.
That's funny.
It was sobering.
That's fantastic. If folks are interested in purchasing your book or sampling it, what's the best way to?
Amazon is where it sits right now. Bookstores are starting to pick it up, but I don't know who they are at this point. We are targeting Vermont bookstores, but I don't know the update on that. So that's really the place to get it. If you want a signed copy, you could send me a direct email and I can sign it to whoever you want, and we could do it that way. But I don't have millions of those, just maybe, I don't know, 20 or 30 of those.
Okay, great. And we have a workshop next week on Thursday, same time, to talk about the power of a graceful leader and leadership approaches. And so if you're interested and curious, we certainly encourage you to register and attend that event and also spread the word. We want to support Lexi's work and help people connect with resources to support growth and development. So it's open. The event's free and available to anyone who's interested. And so we welcome participation.
And you don't need the book. So just so you know, this isn't a sales pitch for a book. I just put a link in the chat. and you can just go there and download the tenets for free in a PDF form. And if you had that in front of you and a notebook, you'd be great. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So that maybe that's a little homework if you're planning to attend, take a look at it beforehand. So then,
Yeah, because I think if you read the tenets and something in there is resonating with you, that's where you want to focus. The book is written to meet you where you are today, and then put it down. And 2 years from now, you look at it on your shelf and you go, "What was that tenet?" And then you open it up and you're like, "Yeah, that one doesn't interest me, but this one does," because it continues to meet you where you are, and you're not every time you interface with the book, you're never the you were yesterday. So that's how it's designed.
great.
Yeah.
I secretly love books where I can just read a chapter at a time out of
Yep.
order, put it down, think about it, wrestle with it, come back
Yep.
to it. So
Me too.
I'm excited to connect with you and to read your work and start to think about putting it in practice, and how we
Thanks.
can grow through it with it.
Thank you.
Are there any questions that we haven't talked about that you're like, you have a secret yearning to share, or challenges that you're facing right now that this community could support you in
Well, I have a
achieving?
challenge, but I have a call with Rebecca this afternoon.
Okay.
So I'm already tackling that with her. It's web page stuff. We've got to bring Ubuntu up, and I need help in more of a maintenance space with someone that I love and trust, and she's on the short list, and I want to do it local.
You've mentioned Ubuntu, but we haven't talked about it specifically. Would you share a little bit about
Sure,
the
sure.
space you're creating?
Yeah, so I call it it's an intensive, intimate intensive space. So that means we're not having retreats where there's hundreds of people, not even 50, maybe not even 20 people at a time, like intimate. um, and 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 where people can come live here for a while and also do some really deep transformational work with me. That's what I'm hoping this goes into, is that people, whether they're going through transition or they're coming in and out of a grieving process, those seem to be places where people are reaching out to me, that if they need to just check out of their life and they have the capacity to do so for 2 weeks, a month, a year, it doesn't matter, that we can create that space here with them. And if they're called to work with nature, that would be part of why they would choose to come to Ubuntu. And there'll be I'm already partnering with over a couple dozen other healers here locally that will also come on and do workshops or offer adjunct support where I'm not an expertise, which is most places I only have my expertise and I need it everywhere else for that. So it's going to evolve. I'm learning some of the Starksboro town rags, as you know, Karin, and what's a cottage industry, what isn't, if I want to put a cabin up. So there's a lot of learning I'm doing about the infrastructure and what I can't, and what I need to beg to do differently if that's the case. So I'm also meeting with a local, you know him, but both of you know Dwyer down the road from us. He's coming over tomorrow, and we're going to co-create some stuff around food and sustainability. So so that type of thing, if anybody feels called that they have a expertise around healing or food or nature, like forestry or anything like that, Melissa Hoffman, same last name as your mom, down in Huntington, they own Show Sanctuary. Melissa and Sean, they're going to be intimately involved in where we're going to be planting and how we're going to grow and rewild some of the land. So yeah, there's a lot there. So anybody that feels called, just call me and let's discover if there's something here for you to partake in.
Cool. That sounds like such an engaging retreat space. And I love Ubuntu. Is it a South African
It
philosophy and
is.
proverb? But I
It
am
is.
because you are. And I think that is just such a beautiful way of showing up in the world and connecting people and place and purpose. And especially in such a beautiful place, and letting, have people experience transformation in the mountains of Vermont.
With
I think
you helping too, remember.
I thank
You're
you.
gonna be a place for people to sleep until there's places here, even then. And so here behind me is, like, right here is these are the modalities for Ubuntu. So you have awareness, you have alignment, transformation, and unity, and that'll be the work that we do here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it is such a pleasure to chat with you. If folks have questions, feel free. You're welcome to take yourself off mute or to enter them in the chat. And
Please ask a question, somebody.
It's just a pleasure to speak with you, Lexi, and to have you as a neighbor,
Oh,
certainly.
I love you, Karin, and anything I can do. I'm going to start recruiting people for this group, but if there's anything I can do for you ever, anyone here, please just ask me.
Thank you. Thank you. What I'm just so inspired by is the power of community. And when we connect with each other and show up with intention, we can create really cool opportunities and partnerships. So I'm excited for what we're creating in the Pivot and Thrive community and with Vermont Collaborative Circle, and happy to support your work as we grow together.
Yeah.
Lori, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask Lexi, what was your initial impetus in writing and coming up with the power of a graceful leader? You know, I'm in business as well, and just finished the yoga teacher training and trying to bring some of those things in alignment for myself as I start to move towards building my own business and stepping out of the corporate world. So I'm really curious as to sort of what was the initial impetus to get you to start the book in Vermont and then kind of do some of the work and finish it up in Vermont.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And so in my executive coaching practice, so one of the things I do is I look for patterns. So that's just an innate way of my being. So when I was coaching specifically high-powered women and actually high-powered people, they were getting into their senior VP roles and above, and they were looking around going, well, you have to reckon with there's not many people like you, so you got to figure out all that. That's why coaching even exists, right? So you have some safe place. And then more importantly, they were starting to find incongruencies and out of alignments with their integrity, with their spiritual practice, definitely with their health. And I was also having the same journey. I was maybe 6 months, sometimes a year ahead of someone. So as I was evolving into that, I was bringing people with me. And as I started to see that the work I was doing for myself was sticky and sustainable, and then therefore it was on the other side, and the gratitude work being a very foundational piece, the rest of it just kind of, I was now in flow and the rest just came through. I didn't have to, there wasn't a moment in time. It was more of a moments that were just kind of compounding on each other that came into this knowing. I will also share that my karmic workout is that I'm part of what I offer the world is my writing. So I know that about myself, and I'm now I'm honoring that part of who I am. Yeah. Thank you for that question.
Oh, you're welcome.
And congratulations on your yoga. That's awesome.
Just about to, I have got a couple things to finish and then I got my YTT.
Do you know where you're going to practice? Are you going to have your own studio or?
I am, so it's kind of evolving. I'm pivoting from one thing to another as to how I'm going to bring that out. Originally, I was thinking that just to get some teaching experience that I would, and I already have a job lined up pre-COVID, it was lined up, but, and that is to teach at the gym that I work out at, because that's a great way to get some initial experience just based on what a lot of other people have said.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like, you know, we spent a lot of time on meditation and study of Ayurvedic eating and living, and so not a lot of time, but, you know, it's a long study, but a dabble into it. So I think what I'm trying to find a way, and, you know, your work may help me kind of put some of that, you know, together, is how to bring in to the financial coaching that I'm going to be doing, you know, sort of a grace and a aligning it with your values. And, you know, maybe if I'm doing a workshop, like I've thought about, you know, using some movement and yoga movement to just allow people to get their bodies and their heads in a way to kind of think about their life goals. So, you know, it's evolving, but that's kind of, you know, what I'm thinking about.
I would like to explore that with you when it makes sense. And I definitely feel like if you wanted to practice your trade, you are more than welcome to come out here, and we can get groups of people up here on the mountain. And it would be a beautiful scenery. It would align with what you're doing, and you can practice your skill.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So I'm getting my business set up. I've come up with the name, I've registered the domain, I'm working on, you know, like I'm kind of in all that stuff you have to do
Yep.
to get your website and business launched.
What's
But
your name?
Evolution Financial Coaching is the
I
name.
love it.
It was going to have something with pivot in it, but it's, pivot and thrive and too many other things are pivot right now. So I changed it to evolution, and that sits well. It fits like, helping people evolve, multiple different ways. So enough about me. Back to you.
No, that's not. I would really, really like to talk more. So let's like offline grab each other, because I think that I think I can help you connect, because I know other women doing what you're doing and doing it pretty well. So I can share some of that information. And
Great.
then I just think there's a space for you in my world, if that makes sense for you.
Great. Yeah.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And the great news is you are both members of the Pivot and Thrive community, so you can naturally start that conversation at any time and connect with each other and in this sort of collaboration spaces that we're creating there. And great.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to thank you, Karen, for pulling this kind of thing together. And Lexi, I'm just delighted that you're in Starksboro, and with both of you now I have a different way that we're working together, and I'm really excited about that. And I think there are lots of other things that are going to bubble to the surface. So thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, it's just such a privilege to do this work, to be able to connect people and create relationships that empower individuals and small businesses and support the communities in Vermont that we hold dear. So to share this time with you is my privilege and honor. And thank you for sharing your story, Lexi, for helping us to see the potential and possibility in our own stories and how we can weave together those small experiences or realizations that we might have on a daily basis or moment to moment to realize that that can become our calling, and that we have something to share that's unique and that the world needs. And so I'm really looking forward to your workshop next week on Thursday, and looking forward to diving into your book and learning about the 6 tenets of a graceful leader, and supporting your work as it comes together as a retreat center at Ubuntu, and everything that you have to share with our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, you guys. I love you all.
Oh, thank you. Take care. Have a lovely day. I hope you all have a sunbeam that you can step into today.
I'm going to go look for one.
Go find it. Go find it.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.